Get ready, because what you're about to discover might completely change the way you see the United States. If you thought you'd seen it all in American politics, wait until you hear about Trump's 10 new laws that promise to transform the country forever. These decisions are sparking heated debates, dividing opinions, and creating a scenario that could alter the course of American history, and maybe even the world. Some of these changes promise to boost the economy and strengthen the US as an even greater powerhouse. Others, however, raise serious concerns about human rights, individual freedoms, and even the future of democracy in the country. After all, what happens when a president makes decisions that drastically affect millions of people? Are we witnessing a necessary reconstruction, or is this a ticking time bomb ready to explode? The truth is that these new policies are not just about politics. They directly impact the lives of every American citizen, and even those living outside the US. The end of automatic citizenship, border closures, billionaires influencing the government, the rollback of environmental laws, and even the possibility of annexing Greenland. Yes, you read that right. These decisions are bold, controversial, and without a doubt will shape the future of the world's greatest power. So, if you want to fully understand what's happening and what the real consequences of these new laws are, stay tuned. But be prepared. Some of these changes might be far more impactful than you think. If there's one thing no one can deny, it's that Donald Trump wastes no time when he takes office. The moment he stepped back into the White House, he began implementing a government plan that for many feels like a shock of reality. His early moves haven't gone unnoticed. On the contrary, they've triggered intense discussions across the US and beyond. Whether in the news, on social media, or in everyday conversations, everyone has something to say about his decisions. After all, we're talking about a leader who doesn't shy away from controversy and, like it or not, has a very clear vision of what he wants for the country. But the real question here is, are these measures truly beneficial for the US, or are they simply a reflection of a risky political strategy? The impact of these actions goes far beyond American borders. Allied nations, economists, and even business leaders are scrutinizing every step he takes, trying to predict the potential consequences. Some of his decisions may strengthen the economy, while others might isolate the US from the rest of the world. And the most intriguing part, despite the backlash, a significant portion of the population believes these changes are necessary. But will the results be as positive as Trump's supporters hope? Or are we witnessing a shift that could trigger unexpected domino effects? Trump's political style has always been aggressive and direct, and this is evident in the way he governs. To some, this approach feels like someone finally bringing order to the House, while to others, it signals instability and regression. This brings up a crucial point. Acting swiftly can be a strength, but it can also backfire. Implementing radical changes so early in his term might look like efficiency, but it can also lead to early resistance. History has shown us that leaders who push for sweeping transformations too quickly often face fierce opposition. Just look at Brexit in the UK or the protectionist policies of past governments. Bold moves come with unpredictable consequences. So, here's the big question. Is Trump building a prosperous future for the US? Or is he deepening internal divisions that could prove costly in the long run? On one side, his supporters claim he is restoring the country's greatness. On the other, critics argue that these measures are dangerous setbacks. But before jumping to conclusions, we need to analyze each decision in detail and how it affects different sectors. And to begin, let's talk about the first major change that's already causing an uproar: the end of automatic citizenship for those born in the United States. Yes, you heard that right. And the implications of this move are massive. Few announcements have had such an immediate impact as this one: the elimination of birthright citizenship for those born on American soil. Historically, the US has been a destination for people seeking a better life, and for many, having a child in the US meant securing a more stable future. But Trump decided to change that reality, arguing that birthright citizenship was being exploited and needed to be revised. Now, children of undocumented immigrants and even temporary visa holders will no longer have this privilege. His reasoning? To protect national interests and prevent birth tourism, where families enter the country just to secure citizenship for their children. This decision immediately sparked a firestorm of reactions. On one side, supporters argue that this policy will prevent abuse and reduce the strain on the immigration system. On the other hand, critics claim it violates constitutional principles and could create a generation of stateless individuals, children born in the US who are not automatically granted any nationality. Legal battles are already underway, and the Supreme Court is expected to play a critical role in determining the measure's fate. Given the current conservative majority in the court, many believe this policy has a strong chance of being upheld. But here's the key question. If the Constitution explicitly guarantees birthright citizenship, can this change truly be sustained in the long term? Or will it trigger a legal and political battle so intense that it could paralyze other government initiatives, and the repercussions extend beyond politics? Imagine parents who have lived in the US for years, paying taxes and contributing to society, only to find out that their children are not considered American citizens. This affects everything from obtaining passports and social security numbers to facing the risk of deportation. For many, this isn't just a legal technicality. It's the difference between building a life in the US or being forced to return to a country they no longer consider home. And if this policy is upheld, what's next? Even stricter restrictions for legal immigrants, a complete overhaul of long-standing immigration rights, and like any decision of this magnitude, the domino effect has already begun. The international community is watching closely, as this could inspire other countries to reconsider their nationality laws. But before we dive into the legal battles, we need to understand just how far this could go. And when it comes to controversial changes, Trump doesn't stop there. His next move is already fueling another heated debate: the elimination of diversity, equity, and inclusion (DEI) policies, and this topic is bound to be even more polarizing. A decision of this magnitude was bound to face strong resistance. The end of birthright citizenship has quickly become the center of a legal battle that could redefine fundamental rights in the United States. Lawyers, activists, and constitutional scholars argue that this policy violates the 14th Amendment, which clearly states that all persons born or naturalized in the United States are citizens. On the other hand, Trump's supporters claim that the amendment was never intended to apply to the children of undocumented immigrants, and that this change is simply a necessary correction to prevent abuse. But the real issue is, will this interpretation hold up in court? The judicial fight is already unfolding, and lower federal courts are being flooded with lawsuits challenging this measure. Experts predict that, sooner or later, the case will reach the Supreme Court. With a conservative majority in place, the odds of Trump's policy being upheld are significantly higher. But here's the tricky part. Changing a fundamental right like citizenship isn't something that can be done with a simple executive order. If the Supreme Court validates this decision, the impact will be permanent, making the US one of the few developed countries to restrict birthright citizenship. And this legal battle is not just a court matter, it's already shaking up the political landscape. Congress is under pressure to take a stand, and lawmakers are introducing both proposals to block and reinforce the measure. Large corporations, universities, and civil rights organizations are also pushing back, warning of severe economic and social consequences. If children born in the US lose their automatic citizenship, what will their future look like? Will they be left in legal limbo, stateless and vulnerable? And if this policy starts affecting even children of temporary visa holders, is the US unintentionally creating a new class of second-class residents? This decision could set a precedent for even harsher immigration policies. And knowing Trump, this won't be the last radical change in his agenda. While the legal battles rage on, another policy shift is already causing massive controversy: the elimination of diversity, equity, and inclusion (DEI) policies. And this change directly impacts businesses, universities, and even the job market. With a single stroke of his pen, Trump dismantled decades of progress in diversity, equity, and inclusion (DEI), arguing that these policies created unfair advantages and distorted the true concept of meritocracy. In his view, opportunities should be based solely on merit and competence, without considering factors like race, gender, or socioeconomic background. For his supporters, this is a return to a fair system where individual talent matters most. But for critics, this rollback risks deepening inequalities, pushing historically marginalized groups even further from leadership and power. But what does this mean in practical terms? Companies that were once encouraged or even required to adopt inclusion policies will no longer have that responsibility. Universities may now reevaluate their admissions processes, abandoning affirmative action programs that have helped minorities gain access to higher education for decades. The key question is pure meritocracy enough to ensure a level playing field? Or are we returning to a system where only those who already have pre-existing advantages will continue to thrive? And more importantly, will this rollback actually help the economy, or will it create even more barriers for millions of Americans? History shows that countries investing in diversity see clear benefits. Studies have consistently shown that diverse companies are more innovative and profitable, as varied perspectives lead to better problem-solving and decision-making. In sectors like technology, for example, diverse teams develop more effective products for broader audiences. Silicon Valley itself embraced aggressive diversity initiatives, not for charity, but because it made good business sense. So if the economic logic favors diversity, why is Trump dismantling these initiatives? Could this decision end up harming the US's global competitiveness rather than strengthening it? And like any structural change, this decision is triggering a chain reaction. Global corporations may reconsider investments in the US, wary of operating in a less inclusive environment. Top universities are already discussing the long-term effects on admissions and leadership development. But while this debate heats up, Trump is already pushing through another measure that's sparking even bigger reactions: the closure of borders and the crackdown on asylum seekers. And the effects of this decision go far beyond immigration. Few decisions by Trump have had as much global impact as this one: a total border shutdown and the suspension of asylum programs. His justification? Protecting national security and preventing uncontrolled migration, claiming that many exploit the asylum system as a shortcut to permanent residency. For his supporters, this is a necessary measure to curb illegal immigration and stop criminals from entering the US under the guise of seeking refuge. But for critics, this move strips away fundamental human rights, leaving thousands of vulnerable people without protection from war, persecution, and extreme violence. And the consequences aren't just for immigrants. With borders closed, entire industries that rely on immigrant labor are already feeling the impact. Agriculture, for instance, has historically depended on migrant workers to maintain production, and without this labor force, costs could skyrocket. Tech companies, which attract global talent, are also concerned that restrictions may stifle innovation and weaken the country's competitive edge. But beyond economic effects, there's a moral dilemma at play. The US, once known as the land of opportunity, is now turning its back on those who need it most. And what happens to refugees already in the process of seeking asylum? Many are now stuck in bureaucratic limbo, unsure if they will be allowed to stay or be deported back to life-threatening conditions. The humanitarian impact is enormous, raising serious concerns among human rights organizations like the United Nations and the Red Cross. These groups strongly oppose Trump's decision, warning that it could lead to a global crisis. But does Trump care about international pressure? If there's one thing his presidency has proven, it's that he doesn't govern to please foreign institutions. His focus is solely on what he believes is best for America. And if you think this was one of the most radical actions, just wait. Beyond border closures, Trump is doubling down on deportations, creating a special task force with unprecedented powers that are sparking fierce debate. If closing the borders was already a shocking move, Trump's creation of a specialized task force dedicated solely to hunting down and deporting undocumented immigrants has escalated tensions even further. This new force doesn't just tighten immigration laws, it grants unprecedented power to authorities, removing previous protections that prevented arrests in safe zones like schools, hospitals, and even churches. To Trump's supporters, this is a long overdue crackdown on illegal immigration, which they claim overburdens social services and threatens national security. But critics see it as a dangerous escalation, turning every undocumented immigrant into a criminal, regardless of their background or contributions to society. The big question is, how will this policy be implemented in real life? Up until now, immigration agents were restricted from making arrests in community-safe spaces, but under Trump's new directive, nowhere is off-limits. Imagine a mother taking her child to the hospital, only to be arrested in the waiting room, or a worker picking up his kids from school, never making it back home. These aren't exaggerated scenarios, they are very real possibilities. But is this method truly effective, or is it just a way to instill fear in entire immigrant communities? The economic impact is another major concern. Millions of undocumented immigrants work in essential sectors like construction, agriculture, hospitality, and domestic services. A mass deportation could trigger a domino effect, leaving businesses without workers and consumers facing rising costs. Additionally, many undocumented immigrants have lived in the US for decades, paying taxes and raising families. What happens to their children, many of whom are US citizens? Will families be torn apart under this aggressive policy? This is only the beginning of Trump's immigration crackdown. While immigrants brace for what's coming next, another controversial decision is already sparking outrage: his rollback of environmental protections to allow increased drilling and resource extraction, even in protected areas. And the long-term consequences of this could be irreversible. Trump has always made it clear that he sees environmental regulations as obstacles to economic growth. And now, with one executive order, he has dismantled a wide range of environmental protections, opening the door for oil, gas, and natural resource extraction in previously protected lands. His reasoning? Boosting the economy, reducing reliance on foreign energy, and creating more jobs for Americans. For his supporters, this is a logical, pragmatic move. Why leave resources untapped when they could be fueling economic expansion? But for environmentalists, this is nothing short of a disaster, threatening fragile ecosystems, wildlife, and even indigenous communities that have lived in these areas for centuries, and the effects are already being felt. With these new deregulations, major energy corporations are rushing to claim their stakes. The Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, one of the world's most environmentally sensitive areas, could soon become a major drilling hub. Similarly, national parks and conservation lands may no longer be safe from mining, fracking, and deforestation. The real question is, does the economic gain outweigh the environmental cost? Will this short-term boost in oil production truly benefit the country in the long run? Or is the US gambling with its own natural heritage? And it's not just environmentalists raising concerns. Investors and financial markets are questioning the impact of these policies on the US's international reputation. Sustainable energy is the future, and by doubling down on fossil fuels, could Trump be setting America back while the rest of the world moves forward? China and the European Union are already leading in renewable energy investments, while the US seems to be betting on an industry that may soon be outdated. But Trump isn't backing down. In fact, his administration is doubling down on its stance against global environmental policies. And in his next shocking move, he pulls the US out of the Paris Agreement on Climate Change and the World Health Organization, WHO, a decision that could further isolate the country on the global stage. If anyone still doubted Trump's America First stance, this decision made it crystal clear. By withdrawing from the Paris Climate Accord and the World Health Organization, WHO, Trump has severed key international commitments, arguing that these organizations prioritize foreign interests over American well-being. His supporters praise this move as a necessary stand for national sovereignty, claiming that the US was unfairly funding global initiatives with little return. But critics argue that this withdrawal damages America's leadership role on the world stage and could have serious long-term consequences. Let's break it down. The Paris Climate Accord is an international commitment to reducing carbon emissions and fighting climate change. By pulling out, the US is now one of the only major nations refusing to participate. This move not only weakens global environmental efforts, but also risks damaging US credibility. Green energy companies are already warning that this could slow innovation and investment in sustainable technologies, while competitors like China and the EU accelerate their clean energy initiatives. Is Trump sacrificing long-term energy progress for short-term economic gains? The withdrawal from the WHO is even more shocking. In a post-pandemic world, cutting ties with the leading global health authority seems like a risky move. Trump claims the WHO is biased and failed to handle past health crises properly. But now the US loses direct access to crucial global health data and initiatives. What happens when the next pandemic emerges? Will the US be left out of global vaccine distribution efforts and medical research? But Trump doesn't seem concerned about these risks. His administration remains laser-focused on putting American interests first, regardless of the diplomatic backlash. And while the world processes this global shift in US policy, Trump is already making his next big move. A $500 billion investment in artificial intelligence, a game-changing strategy that could reshape the future of technology worldwide. While many of Trump's policies spark controversy and division, some of them show a clear strategic vision for the future. And one of his most ambitious moves is the decision to invest a staggering $500 billion in artificial intelligence, AI. His goal? To ensure that the United States becomes the undisputed leader in AI development, keeping innovation under American control and preventing rivals like China from taking the lead. For entrepreneurs and investors, this may be one of the smartest and most forward-thinking moves of his presidency. But is this investment enough to secure US dominance in technology? Or is it just a political promise with little real impact on the industry? What makes this investment so significant is that AI is not just another technological tool, it is the foundation for the future of healthcare, security, defense, finance, and even governance. With this massive funding, tech companies will have the resources to accelerate research and development, advancing everything from autonomous vehicles to next-generation cybersecurity. Additionally, Trump's administration aims to use AI-driven technology to modernize infrastructure, improve public services, and strengthen national defense. But here's the real question. How will this money be distributed? Will it go to small, innovative startups, or will it just fuel the growth of tech giants that already dominate the industry? Another critical issue is the impact of AI on jobs. As automation replaces more human labor, concerns about structural unemployment are growing. Experts warn that without proper workforce training and transition programs, millions of jobs could vanish. Industries like transportation, customer service, and even legal services could undergo massive transformations in the coming years. Is Trump considering how to prepare American workers for this shift, or is his focus solely on accelerating technological advancements without addressing their social impact? Regardless of the debate, this AI investment will reshape the global economy. But while the US is pushing forward with this innovation, Trump has another shocking geopolitical idea that has left the world stunned: his proposal to annex Greenland and even Canada. It sounds like science fiction, but Trump is completely serious about it. If there's one thing Trump knows how to do, it's shock the world. And this time, he has revived an idea that many thought was a joke: the annexation of Greenland, and surprisingly, even Canada. According to him, this would strengthen US national security and provide unrestricted access to valuable natural resources. Greenland, which is under Danish control, is rich in rare minerals and occupies a strategic position in the Arctic. Canada, with its vast land and abundant resources, would be an unparalleled economic and territorial expansion for the US. But there's a small problem. Both Denmark and Canada have categorically rejected the idea, calling it absurd and a direct violation of their sovereignty. But is this idea really as impossible as it seems? Greenland, for instance, has long sought greater economic and political independence from Denmark. If the US were to offer an irresistible economic deal, would this resistance hold? Some experts suggest that, in the long run, the idea might not be entirely unrealistic. The Arctic is becoming a major geopolitical battleground, with Russia and China expanding their presence in the region. For Trump, gaining control over Greenland could be a strategic move to counter these rivals militarily and economically. But the real question is, would the people of Greenland ever accept becoming part of the US? And the case of Canada is even more surreal. The country is one of the closest US allies, but the idea of annexation deeply offended Canadians. After all, Canada is a strong, sovereign nation with a distinct political and economic system. Trump insists that this union would benefit both sides, consolidating North America into one dominant superpower. But the problem? The political and cultural resistance is enormous. Canada has a strong national identity, independent institutions, and a governance model completely different from the US. The chances of voluntary annexation are close to zero unless Canada undergoes a major internal political shift. While this idea may seem impossible, the fact that Trump is bringing it back speaks volumes about his bold or unpredictable strategic thinking. But while the world is still processing this outrageous proposal, Trump is already making another drastic move, raising import tariffs to protect American industries, a decision that could trigger inflation and global trade tensions. If there's one thing Trump has always believed in, it's that the US should rely less on foreign products. And now, to reinforce that belief, he has announced a significant increase in import tariffs, arguing that this move will protect domestic industries and strengthen the national economy. The logic behind it? By making imported goods more expensive, consumers will be encouraged to buy American-made products. Supporters of this policy claim it will create jobs and revitalize industries that have struggled against foreign competition, especially from China. But will this strategy work in the long run? Or will Americans end up paying more for everyday products? The biggest risk of this policy is inflation. When businesses have to pay more for imported materials or components, they pass that cost on to consumers. Imagine the impact on electronics, cars, and even food prices. Products that were once affordable could become significantly more expensive, triggering a domino effect on the cost of living. And when prices go up while wages stay the same, consumer purchasing power declines, which could actually slow down the economy instead of boosting it. And there's another problem. The global economy doesn't operate in isolation. When the US raises tariffs, other countries retaliate by increasing their own tariffs on American products. This could lead to a trade war, where nations impose tariffs against each other, disrupting entire industries. China, for example, has already faced trade battles with Trump in the past, and the result was economic uncertainty that hurt American farmers and exporters. Is Trump ready for another round of economic conflict? Or does he believe that the US economy is strong enough to handle any countermeasures? Regardless of the outcome, this policy is creating major uncertainty for businesses, investors, and consumers. While companies rethink their supply chains, American households brace for rising costs. But as economic tensions build, another major power shift is happening within Trump's administration. Billionaires like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos are stepping into government roles, raising concerns about potential conflicts of interest. If there's one defining feature of Trump's presidency, it's the merging of business and politics. And now that connection is stronger than ever, with billionaires like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos taking active roles in the government. Musk, always unpredictable, has positioned himself as a vocal supporter of several Trump policies, particularly those related to innovation and economic expansion. Meanwhile, Bezos, who was once a fierce critic of Trump, is also getting closer to the corridors of power for strategic business interests. But this close relationship between ultra-wealthy entrepreneurs and the government raises a critical question. Is the administration being guided by public interest or by the financial goals of a few corporate elites? Musk's involvement makes sense from Trump's perspective. The Tesla and SpaceX founder represents the image of a visionary entrepreneur, someone who challenges traditional systems and pushes the boundaries of technology, which aligns perfectly with Trump's pro-business, deregulation-driven mindset. The result? Increased incentives for the aerospace industry, artificial intelligence, and military tech development. But this alliance also sparks concerns. Musk has billion-dollar government contracts, and his influence on policymaking could create major ethical dilemmas. Is he using this political proximity to gain more advantages for his companies? Or does he genuinely believe in shaping the future of the US economy through innovation? Bezos, on the other hand, presents a more complex case. For years, he was one of Trump's biggest enemies, especially since Trump repeatedly attacked the Washington Post, which Bezos owns. However, the Amazon founder understands that staying close to power is essential for his business empire. Trump's policies, such as corporate tax cuts and deregulation, already benefit big corporations. But will Bezos's political involvement lead to even more policy shifts that favor monopolies? Could we see Amazon gaining additional advantages in federal contracts while small businesses struggle under the weight of new regulations? This growing presence of billionaires in the government is reshaping the political landscape. Powerful corporations now have direct influence over policymaking, which could be either an opportunity or a serious risk. But while this discussion over corporate influence rages on, Trump makes another highly controversial move. He grants pardons to 1,500 people involved in the January 6th Capitol riot, a decision that could ignite even deeper political divisions in the U.S. If anyone thought Trump was done rewriting history, his decision to pardon 1,500 individuals involved in the January 6th Capitol attack proved otherwise. For his supporters, this was an act of justice, correcting what they see as a politically motivated crackdown on patriotic citizens who were simply protesting a rigged system. But to his critics, this pardon is a dangerous move, one that legitimizes political violence and sets a precedent that could encourage similar events in the future. After all, if those who stormed the heart of American democracy are being forgiven, what's stopping it from happening again? The impact of this decision goes beyond political debates. It further deepens America's internal divisions. It also causes rifts within the Republican Party, as not all of Trump's allies agree with this mass pardon. Some traditional conservatives warn that this could alienate moderate voters and even spark new legal battles. The key question is, does a presidential pardon truly erase a criminal record? Or could this decision be challenged in the courts, leading to even more political chaos? But Trump wasn't finished. In an even more unexpected move, he proposed a U.S. intervention in the Panama Canal, claiming that America should regain control of this strategic trade route for national security and economic dominance. The announcement shocked the international community, particularly because the canal has been under Panamanian control since 1999. The local government immediately rejected the idea, calling it a violation of national sovereignty. But this raises a serious question. How far is Trump willing to go to expand American power? Is this just a political stunt, or does he have a real strategy behind this bold statement? Regardless of his motives, one thing is certain. Trump is taking bold, unconventional actions that are redefining America's role in the world. But with so many drastic changes happening at once, what will the consequences be for the future of the United States? After everything we've covered, one question remains. Where is the United States heading? Will these new policies truly strengthen the country's economy and reinforce its global leadership? Or are we witnessing a risky political experiment that could have long-term consequences? What do you think? Are these changes a necessary transformation or a dangerous regression? The truth is, whether you support or oppose these measures, their impact will be felt for generations. The economy, society, global relations, everything is being redefined. But are the American people truly prepared for the long-term effects of these choices? And more importantly, will other nations follow this path? Now I want to hear from you. Which of these measures surprised you the most? Do you believe these changes will benefit or harm the country? Leave your comment below, because this debate is far from over. And if you want to stay updated on how these policies will shape America's future, make sure to subscribe to the channel now. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any updates, because what's coming next could be even more impactful than you expect. After everything we've covered, one thing is clear. The United States is entering a new era, one that will be defined by these bold and controversial policies. But the real question is, are these changes truly strengthening the country, or are they leading it down a path of division and uncertainty? Some of these decisions could boost the economy, drive technological advancements, and reinforce national security. Others, however, raise serious concerns about human rights, environmental impact, and global diplomacy. The end of birthright citizenship, the crackdown on immigration, the rollback of diversity policies, and the pardoning of those involved in the Capitol riot. Each of these choices carries deep and lasting consequences. Will they make America stronger or more divided? Now I want to hear from you. Which of these actions shocked you the most? Do you believe Trump's policies will benefit the country in the long run, or do they pose more risks than rewards? Drop a comment below and let's discuss. This is a debate that's far from over. And if you want to stay updated on how these policies will unfold and continue shaping the future of the United States, make sure to subscribe to the channel now. Turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Because trust me, what's coming next could be even more impactful than you expect.